the one. This is the one. We got it.
This is the one. What's up, guys? Today we have another past generation non-OU tier that I love, although this one I admittedly have not kept up with ever since it stopped being the main generation, which is when I last seriously played it. So to help me through this wonderful metagame that I have forgotten much but not all of, I have enlisted two current Black and White UU experts in Choolio and Accelgor. Say hello, gentlemen.
What's up, everyone?
All right, so we are going to start out by, first of all, I want to ask you guys, why do you like Gen 5 UU? Cool, let's start with you because you are known as a fanatic of this tier.
Yeah, I kind of am, and for good reasons. What the tier has, what I feel like others don't have, it's that it's really fast-paced. That offense is the main thing, or the main go-to strat in this tier, and that stall isn't as popular, which we probably will cover later, for good reasons. And it's just the fast tier, the fast pacing, the threats, everything. It's like some people compared it to DPPOU, I believe.
Yeah, they
in the
do.
past.
Yeah.
And
Similarities.
That's
there
part
are
of the reason I liked it
similarities.
so much.
And it's just amazing. I can just say it's amazing. It's like perfect to me. There's not really anything I would like to change except for maybe one thing, and that's Lipard because it's kind of dumb.
Lifeheart is
But other
pretty
than that,
stupid.
What would it be?
Leopard, however
Oh,
you pronounce
for
it.
sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's a dumb Pokemon because unlike OU, there's not a bunch of magic guards and endless regenerators and protects to ruin it.
exactly.
Yeah. Axel, why do you like Gen 5 UU so much?
Like Coolio said, it's a very fast-paced tier, and I like that a lot about it because a lot of games have like a natural low margin for error, and I personally like that, about the tier. It just, it's a high-stakes environment. Each turn just counts, that much, and yeah, I just prefer, more offensively based tiers like that.
I always liked Gen 5 UU because, well, I remember its very earliest iterations, which were hellish, but we won't be going into those too much. I've just always liked the creativity that comes out of UU, and it's like this trend kind of tends to repeat itself that a certain generation of OU will then look like a later generation lower tier. And this was the first time I really noticed that because there's, Zapdos and Swampert and Suicune and all these other Gen 4 OU staples just kicking it in UU with a bunch of other guys that you normally wouldn't see them together with, and I really like that. So far from UU's origins in Gen 5, which were dominated by Victini and Sun, now it's just dominated by Victini. Then Kyurem, and then other nightmare like Deoxys defense was UU for a while. That was pretty crazy. But it was, yeah, and then it got banned from OU
Remind
too.
me.
I,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. But yeah, now we're going to go into the vibe. What is the metagame generally like? Before we get into the specifics of the viability rankings and the top pokes, but what is the metagame like when you say offense? What are we generally looking at in a given Gen 5 UU game?
We both said it
Well,
earlier. You know how like tier's fast paced. Partially that's due to the omnipresence of spike stack teams, and especially because it's black white. So naturally defog doesn't remove hazards, and that leaves spin as the only option. And this tier does have a good number of ghosts that are viable and see a lot of usage. So it really does come together to create that high paced environment that we were talking about earlier.
And the spikers are really good, and the spinners aren't fantastic, so that helps. But in general,
yeah,
yeah, the tier just hits really hard.
Lots of offensive firepower to go around, that's for sure. But we'll see that when we
exactly.
get the viability rankings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literal firepower in any case. So we're starting with the viability rankings. So in S, we have Zapdos, Victini, Togekiss, and Snorlax. And I know Cool believes that Kingdra should be in there too, but we'll get to that in a bit. So I am very happy to see Zapdos in the top slot because I think it's amazing. And when I played Gen 5 UU semi-recently, I decided, Well, this is a tier with Zapdos and no Sand Special Defense boosted Tyranitar. Therefore, Zapdos is incredible, and I'm glad that others share that sentiment. I remember back when Gen 5U used the main tier. That's going to be my primary contribution to this, by the way. Just you guys are very modern, and I'm just remembering back when we had Frostlass and Chandelure. For a long, long time, Snorlax was considered the best Pokemon in the tier. And it doesn't look like it's unequivocally number one anymore, but it's still S, which is a big deal. So what's the deal with Snorlax? What does it do?
Well, one of the main set that is being used nowadays is the Protect set, which wasn't as big during Black and White being the main generation. It's like Protect, Stab, Pursuit, and whatever filler move you like. I've seen Toxic being more common as of late. And the main reason is
Toxic versus Earthquake, yeah.
Yeah, and the main reason is like people trying to catch stuff like Victini with it that just recreated something into oblivion. Or if it is Scarftini, which doesn't hit as hard. And that's a way for them to be able to take care of it. The toxic thing came from being able to hit Cofagrigus. Since after Chandler got banned during X and Y, because I don't remember who held the vote. I think it was Coco Loco.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And Cofagrigus just started to rise due to Chandler being gone and not being the best, being the best option.
I remember. Chandelure was really stupid. It was because it had no counters besides Snorlax and Porygon2, and then it started Will-O-Wisping Snorlax, and it started running Flame Body over Flash Fire, so Porygon2 couldn't trace Flash Fire anymore, and it was just the dumbest thing ever. So Chandelure got banned.
Yeah, it was really versatile, and that was what made it so good. And if you ask me, even better than Victini in the past, since Victini had or still has three really common sets, which are Scarf, Choice Band, and the special attacking set. Then you can sometimes toy around with maybe add Will-O-Wisp over a move of your choice.
Or be doing that a lot more, yeah. Just Will-O-Wisp on Victini in general, which is pretty fantastic. Catches a lot of people off guard.
Especially because, like you guys said, then Snorlax, one of its biggest strengths is being able to pursue Victini, and now it's just kind of like Chandelure in that sense, in that, well, Snorlax would counter it, but Victini burns it, and Snorlax becomes worthless.
Exactly.
Another thing because Snorlax holds together a lot of teams. It's probably the most splashable mon in the tier. And just crippling it right off the bat is huge because it soft checks Electrics, stuff like Nidoqueen, Victini, of course. Just a whole slew of ones.
And it's really hard to switch into safely. And it's kind of like GSC Lax in that sense. So I remember it is just without, it's not as immortal. But I remember in current gen, then Victini was considered really dumb by many. Like, you would switch in your Rhyperior to take on a banded set, and then it would grass knot you and other silly stuff like that. You guys don't think Victini's broken?
I don't think it is broken at all. Since Stealth Rocks are literally everywhere, then if it's Specialtini and you have a good answer to that, it's not really gonna break the opposing team. And nowadays, everything runs Protect. Like Rhyperior runs Protect, you have Snorlax running Protect, Blastoise runs Protect. Even Raikou started running Protect on the Calm mindset over Substitute.
Yep, that is a variant, that I've seen a lot.
And then you have sets like CBTini, if you scout that successfully, then okay, fine, you should have a fire resistance in the back. If you don't, then you made kind of mistake in the team building process. And you can just switch into that if you scout it successfully. And that's also a reason why Druddigon became more popular in the past, because if it gets grass knotted, it doesn't care since it resists that easily. And it also has Pursuit, being able to trap Teeny back. And the next thing is, if you run a less offensive set and go with Rough Skin and Rocky Helmet on top of that, you can chip down Victini so easily.
There's punishment for Victini right there. You fire off a move and it's suddenly at like 60%. Great.
I remember a set that was being used that was Stealth Rock, Dragon Tail, Rest, and Sleep Talk with Rough Skin and Rocky Helmet. Does that one still get used?
Not as much
Not as
anymore
much
due
anymore.
to the tier being more offensive paced again. I don't remember seeing many people use stallish teams or full stall teams, but we will cover that later, I guess.
Yeah. What I like about Druddigon is that even if Victini hits it with like Glaciate or something, that it's still not doing a ton because of that its huge bulk, and it's kind of like a it's kind of like an early gen Como O for the newer gen players who want to think of it that way. And it's funny you mentioned rocks because 3 of the 4 S rank pokes are Stealth Rock weak, and they're still incredible because there's no Sandstorm or Hail to rub the Stealth Rock weakness in, so it doesn't hinder them as much. And they do this even though there aren't too many great spinners in the tier. So and spinning isn't easy to pull off even if you do have a spinner. So
Ex-
yeah, I wanted to mention. I'm pretty sure this is still more or less true, but I remember UU in the past was characterized by some of the big threats by typing. So what I mean by that is you had the electric duo of Zapdos and Raikou, you had the fire duo of Victini and Darmanitan, and then you had a ton of fighters, Heracross, Mienshao, and others like Scrafty that were less popular but still really dangerous. But and then you had things like Nidoqueen, which became popular over Nidoking, even though it ran an offensive set, because it had the bulk to answer these while still being an offensive threat on its own. So is UU still like that? Does it still have those, the electrics, the fires, the fightings, and the answers to those Pokemon?
yes, it does have.
Pretty accurate,
It's
yeah.
yeah, it didn't
You'll,
change
you'll see
much. You
you'll
go
see
ahead.
much of like type stack teams actually. I know Coolio's had this one electric spam team that saw a lot of usage in like black white UU cups and UU classic in general. And yeah, you'll even see like the odd fire spam even with the obvious stealth rock weakness. But those sorts of strats are very powerful to say the least, just because these mons are very overpowered, and like we said, it's a fast paced tier. So strategies like those are definitely very commonplace in black white.
Yeah, especially if we take the most common one, I would say electric spam, which makes
Yeah,
totally sense to pull off because Raikou and Zapdos both pressure Snorlax so much,
for
and you
sure.
can even go so far and run Aura Sphere on Raikou, meaning that you have to run Rash Nature on it, which I doubt most people or the newer generations of players don't know.
The shiny kind of gives it away if you know where you're going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just make the
yeah,
Raikou always shiny, even if you don't have Aura Sphere.
for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep,
Just to bluff it.
exactly. Yeah, no,
And
even the fighting gem is an option on it as well to
yeah,
completely just blow Snorlax away and delete it.
One of the coolest
exactly.
things about Gen 5, the gems. So we know what Zapdos does, because it just does Zapdos things. A lot of these sets, like when we get later to the Kingdras and the Swamperts and the Rhyperiors and Roserades, then if you've played Gen 4 OU, then you probably know roughly what they're going to do. But we know what Zapdos does, we know what Victini does, we know what Snorlax does, and Togekiss, kind of like in DPP, but it's also been rare for the past decade or so. So why is Togekiss up so high?
Well, it's one of the main reasons why stall isn't so prominent because it
Exactly.
literally forces you to run Zapdos or anything that's faster than it and resists Air Slash, which results in Zapdos or Raikou, which is an odd choice but has been seen on stall teams with like Sleep Talk, Rest, Roar, and T-Bolt as set,
Yeah,
but it
and
just
the rest
dismantles
sets,
every
we know are
slow
like
design.
unreliable in black white too. Like that's a fair point to mention because of just how black white sleep mechanics work. Resetting after you switch out. So Raikou in and of itself is a pretty rare choice on stall. I haven't seen it. Even Zapdos is they're forced to run a lot of bulk, even if you do barely outspeed the Togekiss, and of course you're taking rocks every time. And worst case scenario, you're at the mercy of like a Thunderwave Togekiss. which can 1v1 you because Serene Grace is just built like that.
I've seen these crazy scenarios because Togekiss is so bulky. Like, you have to run a bulky Zapdos, like you said, and Togekiss is so bulky that you don't even have to catch the Zapdos on the switch. You can potentially do really dumb stuff like live the T-Bolt, T-Wave the Zapdos, and then Roost on it a few times, and then you can easily you can just cycle between Nasty Plot and Roost until you're ready to Air Slash the hell out of it. It's absolutely insane.
Exactly, it can happen a lot. What people also may use Togekiss for is baton passing plus two nasty plots to some decent receivers, since it can take most hits, except for some ridiculous things like CVV create, or maybe a Specs T-Bolt from Raikou, which I believe it
Basketball is
could.
great. Yeah.
It definitely probably could live a Specs T-Ball from Raikou
Yeah, it
if it
could.
really wanted
Yeah,
to. It's
sure.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, the thing with running T-Wave Togekiss is that you don't have Heal Bell, but it's still a ridiculous Pokemon. And it's generally, I would say, better to have T-Wave against more offensive teams on average, because you're not really Heal Belling against things like teams with like Nidoqueens and Shaymins and Raikous, and you more like the ability to cripple a potential Raikou switch in. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially because
kinda.
Raikou is usually the faster mon on a lot of those builds that incorporate it.
Mm-hmm.
So Thunder Waving definitely has value.
Nice.
Yeah, I would like. Well, it depends on the team. There are some teams where I used Heal Bell over T-Wave because I didn't really need to para stuff, and T-Wave and Heal Bell ended up being the better choice. There's a game. I don't remember who used my team, but somebody used it, and Heal Bell paid off since the Raikou got toxic or burnt, and being able to Heal Bell that off from a sub CM Raikou is pretty big.
Oh, definitely. A
So
big thing with
yeah.
Togekiss is also having like Grass Knot, which I've seen a bit, mainly for Rhyperior, which is already at the mercy of Serene Grace Air Slashes, but Grass Knot just completely takes it out of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That used to be in the past pretty common, but kinda declined in use.
I mostly see it on spec sets nowadays, which are still decent because in this gen, Togekiss is normal type, and stab tri attacks definitely hurt even the most prominent checks in Zapdos and Raikou. Like you're easily
Yeah,
doing
And
around
you have
70%.
that
exactly.
really dumb 20% activation rate of a certain status.
For that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're lucky, you get the freeze or para or burn.
Yeah, I mean, even if you switch in a really sturdy normal resist, unless it's Cofagrigus who doesn't really want to switch into a Specs Air Slash, then you can threaten really hard. I just,
Oh, that's
yeah.
the next thing you brought me up to. It's like the best counter to OTR Cofagrigus. Like
Indeed.
it's at +2, and even if it's like physically defensive Togekiss, it doesn't even 2-hit KO. It's still barely a 3-hit KO, I believe. Or it's guaranteed, I don't remember anymore. But like, you just switch in and tank.
Yeah.
Like,
+2 hidden power fightings are doing like 30%. It's great. You
It's
really do not care for it at all.
Yeah, and so I really like that Togekiss. Well, first, I like that 3 of the 4 S ranks are Stealth Rock weak in a metagame where usually you don't even pair them with a spinner. You don't really want to waste the team slot on Blastoise or something worse. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that Cofagrigus is so high up because it is a real. I mean, it gets stopped by Togekiss, but other than that, I often feel like whenever I'm using offense in this tier, then I'm able to break through most cores pretty reliably just through sheer firepower. But Togekiss is the one thing that tends to really annoy. Like, we'll get to the sample teams later, and usually it's because I'm messing up somehow. But whenever I'm using things like Shaymin and offensive Nidoqueen and Cofagrigus and Heracross together, then it feels like Togekiss is that one thing that can just really stand in my way and be almost unkillable. It's almost as if you don't have that stab T-Bolt, then you're really not bringing it out. And even the stab T-Bolt users are obviously susceptible as hell to Thunder Wave. So, and
Yeah,
speaking
the
of
tree better be efficient, otherwise you're in for a world of pain.
yeah, it's great. I mean, even the Stealth Rock weakness just barely holds it back. So now we're in the A plus. We know what Raikou does. Specs, Calm Mind, various Volt Switch stuff. It's a monster. Yeah.
yeah, there's a
Very versatile.
set that has been totally forgotten. It was once used on a pretty known team by Somalia, his Tailwind HO team,
That's so cool.
Scarf Raikou.
Right.
Scarf. Why I mentioned Scarf Raikou is because I recently, or maybe a year ago, I started using Rain a lot, and people kinda don't like facing Rain, which I can understand. And Scarf Raikou is like such a good answer to that because it outspeeds every Rain user.
Hmm.
Unless the Omastar gets to +2 with Shell Smash, then you are kinda screwed. But other than that,
But if you're letting Omastar Shell Smash and Rain, then you're probably losing no matter what you have.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you need to pick up KO on like a 30% Kingdra, and it's just a man for it. Right, you're just coming in, clicking T-Bolt, outspeeding Kingdra in rain. It's amazing.
I also like Scarf Raikou for out. This is going to be the most DPP OU example ever, but this same exact thing happened in that tier. Scarf Raikou became really popular for a time because it outsped and surprise KO'd the Scarf Flygon that was really popular.
I was just gonna mention that. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely cool because Scarf Flygon's pretty commonplace. I want to say.
yeah.
Just a fast pivot. They can set up a lot of other mons, and yeah, just getting that early hidden power ice on it is very valuable, to say the least.
One of the many things that turns Gen 4 OU into Gen 5 UU. Then you have Shaymin, who I always feel like is really good and yet somehow underappreciated, even though I guess most players, if the viability rankings are anything to go by, most players consider it better than Roserade, but I always feel like I see Roserade used so much more. I mean, maybe part of it is like absorption of T spikes, setting spikes and T spikes, and sleep powder. But I don't know. I never feel like Shaymin is used as much as the high viability ranking placement would suggest. So, what do you guys think about Shaymin?
Roserade is definitely the more splashable option, that's for sure, because you mentioned all of the utility that it has. I found with Shaymin that for Moveslot Syndrome it holds it back quite a bit because you're obviously Seed Flare is a staple, and then from there you're looking to add something like Psychic, Earth Power, Hidden Power, Ice or Fire, and then usually in offensive sets they run like Rest in the last slot, combined with Natural Cure, which keeps Shaymin around for the rest of the game. So it's really tough to settle for a set of four moves, especially in this tier where you just want all of those coverage moves just to hit its common checks.
Yeah, that's the main reason. Although rest, I believe, isn't used as much since Hail is gone, and Synthesize just simply is. Now, I wouldn't say it's superior, but it has benefits that rest doesn't. You lose a turn switching out.
Right.
With rest,
That is
you
huge.
don't.
Yeah.
And a move that people used to run in the past was also Air Slash, since that's guaranteed to KO Heracross. I'm
Heracross,
not
yeah.
sure about Virizion anymore, if it does or one hit KO it or not.
It comes
It's
close
another
at
thing.
least.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does a lot for sure.
Does anyone run Healing Wish?
on Scarf you do.
Yeah.
On Scarf Shaman. Maybe on Specs you can run it too, but I just click Seed Flare when I run Specs Shaman, so.
For sure. It stings.
Yeah. So you guys think that Shaymin deserves to be A plus? I mean, obviously it's a good Pokemon, but
Yeah, the main reason is Seed Flare drops. If you get a one drop on something like Togekiss,
That's a good example.
it's just forced to switch out. Like,
Even Zapdos as well, and you combine that with the Rock's weakness, and suddenly you're very much ahead in those games.
exactly.
sounds
Or
very.
even stuff like Bronzong, which is way more common nowadays than in the past.
Mhm.
What's Bronzong in response to?
Well, it runs Protect a lot of times, like almost always.
Rocks, Toxic Protect, yeah, and then
Yeah,
usually
and
filler offensive move, usually Earthquake. I think.
yeah, Earthquake is the most common choice, so it can be able to check Raikou.
Mhm.
And just Toxics the Shaymin, stalls out Seed for PPs, which is kind of big.
What I most think of when I think of Bronzong is the fact that Flygon runs Scarf a lot in this tier, but it runs Choice Band a lot more than it ever did in DPP, and I think that's really cool because Band Flygon, like in this tier, that speed stat and that stab combination is just, it's kind of like the Garchomp of UU, except it also has U-turn and Spikes immunity, which is wonderful. And the only thing in UU that reliably withstands its combination of Earthquake and Dragon Claw or Outrage is Bronzong, and that, of course, doesn't want to take a banded Fire Punch. And and I've noticed, like, a lot of people really like their banned Flygon. Like, it's not like in Gen 4 OU where Scarf Flygon was kind of like this default filler Pokemon you've ended teams with. And I really like that. I like that more people are using Flygon in the way in which it can be as threatening as possible. So you guys been seeing a lot of Bronzongs and a lot of banned Flygons?
Well, less banned.
You can go ahead. Yeah.
Well, less banned Flygons, I would say. Scarf's still more common. But what Flygon's issue is in this tier, it has two stabs that it doesn't want to be locked into. You see Togekiss and Zapdos in S rank, and you really don't want to click Earthquake just to pick up a KO, because Togekiss can set up a nasty plot or even roost up damage off. Zapdos can do the same, or it can even be some agility set. And Outrage issue is that you have Bronzong taking advantage of it, or even things like Cobalion or Cobalion. I have no clue how to pronounce this name since ever it got released. But anyway, and there are still things like Empoleon that could abuse a lock into Outrage, or even stuff like P2, which could just come in into an Outrage locked Flygon and pick up a KO with Ice Beam.
Oh, and it also traces Levitate so you can't Earthquake it. That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think in general, Ben Flygon is really good at enabling trades, which is of utmost importance in this tier, given how much firepower all these mons have. And a lot of people do underestimate its natural attack power, seeing as it only has like base 100 attack. But with that choice band, it's a whole different beast than what people expect at preview.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. But since you mentioned that Bronzong is like the only good switch in, I have to say that there's also Gligar.
Ooh, that's true. That's true. A Viability Gligar is unkillable.
Yeah, it just comes in and doesn't care. Like the only physical attacker that can really two-hit KO it is CB Victini.
But doesn't Gligar EV for it EVs to outrun CB Victini at a -1 speed, right?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So we've got those guys. Oh, Nidoqueen we mentioned. So the standard set is something like Rocks, Earth Power, and then like some combination of Ice Beam, Sludge Wave, T-Bolt, Flamethrower, whatever. And it's max special attack, speed benchmark. Well, I remember some people were going up to Timid and like no bulk, but I don't know if that's worth it. Because part of the reason why people use Nidoqueen was that it's a great offensive check to fighters and electrics, and cutting into the bulk kind of ruins that. So what's Nidoqueen like these days? Anything change in a big way?
I think given that fairy types don't exist this generation, that Sludge Wave isn't really seen as an option. Like you'll usually see obviously Rocks, Earth Power, and then some combination of Ice Beam, Fire Blast, or Focus Blast even. For like Snorlax's, Umbreon's, P2s, and the like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's still used as that bulky rock setter that enables trades. It's like a soft check to the fighters, of course, the electrics. It has like a really good spot in the tier, I think. Really good wall break.
Yeah. And even if you don't use an offensive set, there's always place for it on more bulky teams. Can also pull these sets off with like Stealth Rock, even Taunt on it, Dragon Tail, Earthquake. Earthquake because so it can check Calm Mind Raikou reliably. And other than that, sometimes it runs Toxic Spikes, especially if you see it with like Bronzong alongside. So Bronzong is probably Rocks, Nidoqueen, T-Spikes, or even something crazy like 4 attacks. Just to be able to...
spikes Nidoqueen plus Bronzong combo a lot on like Finchinator's teams, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And he even runs Taunt on his queen
Yeah,
just to fuck with opposing setters. And other than that, it doesn't really do much besides being offensive or defensive set, and the offensive set being way more common. And to make a note on the max speed queens, yes, they are a thing, and I don't really understand why they are a thing, because I may as well just use Nidoking and
right.
do the
The
same
speed tier
thing,
is
just
very
better.
important. Yeah, like that positive base 85 speed stat is really good in this tier. Like you'll end up tying with non-scarf variants of Heracross, for example,
And you can tie
or
with Kingdra.
you outspeed Togekiss or Togekiss. Keep like
Yeah.
mispronouncing it. But
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
really good speed tier to hit.
yeah. All right, that's good stuff. Cofagrigus, for those not in the know, it does not get toxic spikes this generation, and Hex is not very strong. So the standard set is Trick Room, Nasty Plot, Shadow Ball, and HP Fighting. I mean, you can then do stuff like throw Will-O-Wisp on it, but generally it's seen as an offensive Trick Room, Nasty Plot poke, and it can really take over battles late game. And it has some really nice defensive utility with that big close combat immunity, fighting immunity in general, and just good bulk. It doesn't have the HP stat or the resist to take like repeated neutral hits. It doesn't have a reliable recovery, but it can take like any one hit, which is really really nice, and for turning games around. And Mummy can potentially be really nice as well. So, is there anything more to Cofagrigus besides that fighting check, late game sweeper kind of thing? Oh, and the fact that it's annoyed very much by Togekiss.
Well, yeah, there is. There is a one set that I remember having seen in the past, used by Reach Zero. He was pretty fancy with his Cofagrigus, and he sometimes used Rest, Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, HB Fighting with a chest to bury on it, despite
That's
still
insane.
having Heal Bell support in the back. I believe, not sure anymore. It's been, I don't know, 7 years since I've seen that replay.
It's a lot of commitment. Wow.
And it can pull more defensive sets off with boosting moves. It also could go totally defensive with like Pain Split, Wisp, Knockoff, Shadow Ball, stuff like that, but that's pretty uncommon since there are, in my opinion, way better defensive ghost types in the tier like Sableye,
Right.
which also have Prankster as ability, so being able to wisp anything that's usually faster than it before they can attack is pretty big, which Kofag can't just do.
We've droned on and on about how fast-paced the tier is, and intuitively you can see how late game trick room situation, how deadly that can be for your opponent's team. And I've even run into some situations where the opposing player is forced to stall out the trick room turns, and something I've done is just hard trick rooming while the trick room is up on like a catch and just resetting the whole thing altogether and just having more turns to work with. It allows for some really fun gameplay, and it's also very splashable because I think it's the best fighting check in the entire tier.
It doesn't get ripped apart by Heracross's Mega Horn, which is really really big. Traded shares with Nidoqueen actually, because you look at some other fighting resists in the tier like Mew, which is right below it, and it can take close combat, but not Mega Horn. That also extends to something like Mienshao because it has U-turn. So those are some really big traits. So now
I
then there. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing because Heracross can be a bit iffy to check with Kofag and CV Megahorn does like 40 max or 42 max, and with Stealth Rocks up, that's like a 3-hit KO. It still means that Heracross has to hit 3 of them in a row, but just because I think Heracross is the next one in line. Oh yeah, it is actually. Just to go over that, Heracross is just such a beast.
It
No matter
I've seen
is.
what
that
set it.
exact combo with Choice Banded Heracross alongside something like Scarf Mienshao or even Life Orb Mienshao with HP Ice to cover like
Liger.
Gligar, for example. Yeah, so I've seen that combo a lot. It's very effective.
I was gonna say we don't have to talk about Heracross's sets much because it's pretty simple. Choice Band, Choice Scarf, Swords Dance. If it's Heracross, but I wanted to ask if there's any sort of specific niche in the tier that you think Heracross occupies, like how Nidoqueen is used for its ability to check electrics and fighters and pose an offensive threat in return. Where does Heracross kind of fit into that sort of space?
Well, I mentioned that Togekiss is the reason why Stall doesn't work so well, and Heracross is yet another reason why it doesn't. Because if it's SD and you just switch in your glider into it, yeah, have fun getting set up on, unless you're Aerial Ace or Wing Attack. If you have a really slow Zapdos and it's even still again SD or CB and it just predicted correctly and got the Stone Edge off, then goodbye Zapdos. It just hits so hard, and that's a big issue for stall teams to cover. Unless you're going with like Qwilfish and Hitmontop to have the double Intimidate core. Or be like, what else is, have like a really bulky Nidoqueen. Or run, as I mentioned, Aerial Ace or Wing Attack. I don't remember what it was, the better choice anymore. It's been
It's
too long then.
I assume like Sandvale and stuff is banned, so Wing Attack because it has a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
PP.
Yeah, for the power
yeah.
points, yeah. On Scarf variants, one can obviously see how effective it can be with Moxie, plus, the natural spike stag layout of the tier. It can easily snowball out of control for the opposition and, net you a win. Something I've also seen is, on certain teams, if you want some extra insurance versus, say, Sableye or, another status mon, I've seen even Guts on Scarf Heracross, just to fully take advantage of those situations.
Yeah, you don't want to
Yeah,
be switching into Will-O-Wisps if you're planning on a longer game because 12% racks up real quick with rocks. But
it's
yeah,
also a good sleep absorber,
yeah,
Yep,
even
I've
with
run Sleep
Scarf.
Talk in the last spot, yeah, even on Scarf.
yeah.
Yeah. And another thing, again, to mention my man Somalia's team. He used sub SD Salak Heracross on the team, which
Mm.
is also pretty great set, which
Deadly, oh
can
my god.
catch people so badly off guard. Like a glider trying to wall you, but damn, you just sub up on me and click SD.
Can't even break the subs, yep.
Yep.
Uh,
And
so
there's not much else to say about it.
well, before we do, there's next up the Pokemon of a million moves, Mew. So how does Mew choose between all these moves? Because whenever you saw it in Gen 5 OU, then you could pretty much count on it being Taunt, Wisp, Soft Boiled, Ice Beam. And that set is also really great in UU, although it also commonly uses Psyshock over Ice Beam. But or sometimes even Earthquake, actually. That was recommended to me when I was making a Mew team.
For
Because
Victini.
yeah, Victini, yeah. And but I also know that Mew commonly runs. I remember the last SPL with Gen 5 UU had some crazy sets. Like someone used the Bug Resist berry on it for
Oh,
Escavalier or
yeah.
something
Kangdom.
insane.
Yep.
Yeah, really?
Can even catch
That's
like Scarf Heracrosses, yeah. It's
that's
really good. I think it was
okay.
Sicario.
Heracross makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I remember thing like Swords Dance Mew was really popular with Drain Punch, Sucker Punch. So what are these other Mews besides the classic Taunt Wisp?
As you
I actually
just
haven't seen
mentioned,
Yeah,
well, go ahead. Yeah, well, then, okay.
you got it, you
Well,
got it.
well, as you just said, SDMU is still a thing. It just does what it does. Sword stands up on something, click Drain Punch, click Send Headbutt. If it's faster than you just Sucker Punch it to death. Has some issues, for example, you kinda suck against Scarf Heracross, or anything that's Scarf and can resist it, or Weavile, which can be annoying too since it's faster and Night Slash does hurt. And what it really, really can't touch is Sableye and Spiritomb.
That is the big one for SD
Yeah.
sets. Yep.
So people may be a bit afraid of using it because of the Sableye weakness, I would say it can cause your team. And the next setup move that it can run is Nasty Plot. Just same thing again. Pick a target, Nasty Plot up, have +2 special attack, and just click your moves that you have. Where it is way more unpredictable since beside the stab move, it can run Aura Sphere, Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse, Flamethrower, Giga Drain, or
Oh
even
yeah,
silly moves like Ice Beam if you really need to catch Zapdos for whatever reason.
Yeah.
you can like
And
tailor made it, tailor make it to hit anything you want for a particular team. It's great. Just
yeah,
one of the many benefits Mew offers. It's a massive move pool.
Anyone use it as a stealth rocker, or is that generally outdone by Azelf?
yes, it can be still used as a stealth rocker. There are teams that use it as either you run Focus Sash or Mental Herb so they can get the rocks guaranteed off, or be able to taunt the opposing setter if it's an Azelf or even an Aerodactyl. And then they run like Stealth Rock, Explosion, Tailwind, and Taunt. Just on more Tailwind-based offensive teams. There is one by Hawk, I believe, with like Nidoqueen, Druddigon, Suicune, Victini. I forgot the last member actually.
That
Don't
Sharpedo?
remember it.
Sure.
It's not Sharpedo. It's not Sharpedo. It's Trader since it's a Tailwind offense.
Ah,
No.
I don't know many other tiers where Tailwind offense, I mean, in singles anyway, where Tailwind offense is not just not a gimmick, but like a semi-common strategy.
It's actually surprising. It also helps counter teaming or having counter measurements against the rain teams.
mm,
Since on Tailwind offense, you will have like your base 100 pokes, which outspeed the rain users in rain, obviously. Only issue could be that the rain team has a Tornadoes and it also runs Tailwind. So then you gotta fight against the +2 Swift Swimmer with Tailwind on the back. So yeah.
If they manage to set up Rain and Tailwind at the same time, then I think they deserve that. All right,
it
so
has to opt to them. Yeah.
speaking of Swift Swim, our next Pokemon does not rely on it to be good, and but now we're gonna get into like all the Gen 4 OU waters because we mentioned Empoleon earlier, Kingdra, Swampert, Suicune. So this is really familiar territory. So Kingdra is a monster because it doesn't. I mean, in like previous OUs, then its low attacking stats kind of held it back. But in this UU, it doesn't really like DD isn't a joke, and Specs and Rain Dance stuff is a terror. So and it's really good even outside of Rain, and having that quadruple fire resistance is really big because like you said, Victini and Darmanitan. Anything else Kingdra does that's worth mentioning?
I think it single-handedly, serves as the reason that Empoleon is, sees so much usage in UU because it is the only mon that can reliably deal with, any one of its sets. And even then, for that reason, choice specs variants of Kingdra usually run like a hidden power of some sort to catch the Empoleon.
Electric
And,
usually.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because nothing else resists that stab combination because there are no fairy types. So yeah,
Everything
Kingdra,
else
it's a
is knocked
beast.
out.
Yeah, and cool, you said you thought it should be S alongside Zap, Victini, Togekiss, Snorlax.
Yeah, because it's like the best offensive switch into Victini. It can, if it's Scarf, it easily tanks the V crate. It can tank CBV crates too, but at the bigger cost. But if it's Specs Kingdra just switched in, you are most likely either 2-hit KOing something with the combination with Draco Meteor or Hydro Pump. Obviously, you need to hit both, and hitting 2 Hydro Pumps in a row can be a bit iffy. And if it's not that, and if it's just a sub DD Kingdra, or even like chest arrest Kingdra, you just have a great opportunity to DD up there, maybe win the game, or maybe put the hole through the opposing team. And if it's even not that, and it can be just Rain Dance Kingdra, just setting up Rain Dance and just clicking Stab, Surf, or Hydro Pump, or clicking Dragon Pulse if the grass type switches in or Ice Beam. And it's just offensively the best switch in into weak traits. You just can't tell me otherwise. And being such a threat and having a decent-ish speed tier for this tier with base 85, meaning that you hit 295, I believe. I don't remember actually.
You got it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just great.
So you mentioned DD. Something hilarious is I think this happened in the most recent UPL Finals game, where the DD Kingdra, it was sub DD, I believe, it set up completely on Ferroseed, which is also one of those rare mons, that can reliably check it. And
Oh
the
yeah,
Ferroseed, yeah, you remember that the Ferroseed was
yeah,
just sitting there and it couldn't even dent it at all.
yeah. That was UU Snake Finals. I remember
Huge,
that game
right?
because I built a team, and it just abuses such passive threats easily for setup. Ferroseed
Absolutely.
is the biggest one, which has gained in popularity for whatever reason, since I don't think it's great due to that reason. Being
I'm
able
with
to
you.
let Kingdra or even Raikou set up for free. But other than these sets, I don't think Kingdra does much else. Like you can successfully pass maybe and swords dance to it if you are like, okay, I'm running agility on it, or rain dance into waterfall. Same goes with nasty plot.
hmm Yeah, you mentioned Nasty Plot Baton Pass Togekiss before, and I
Yeah.
actually have one of those one team that manages to pass a Nasty Plot to Kingdra and then set up a rain dance. So you can imagine how hectic and chaotic that can be.
A lot. And another really common combination or partner for Kingdra is Tornadoes. They're like these offensive teams where you see like Tornadoes and Kingdra, and you're like, okay, it's not really rain, but maybe it sets up rain or not. And most of the time, it does set up rain for a Specs Kingdra in a late game where you just trying to get Tornadoes in somehow and sack it to whatever it is in front of you. And that could be so crucial, especially with spikes and rocks up.
Yeah, say if the Tornadus is in versus like a Rhyperior, and you're rocking an offensive team, you can just rain dance on the sack and then just go to town with your Kingdra. That very combination is very effective. I've seen it with Ziggs many times.
All right, so speaking of waters in Gen 4, next up we have Swampert, and we can probably, well, I guess the biggest thing about Swampert is that it handles HP Ice Electrics really well, but obviously runs from HP Grass Electrics. And what's the hidden power situation on Zapdos and Raikou regarding Swampert and other grounds?
It's team dependent for the most part, though. We mentioned type stacking earlier. So if you have Raikou and Zapdos on the same team, one of them will always be running HP Grass, while the other will run HP Ice,
Mm-hmm.
just to cover virtually every electric check that there is.
Mm-hmm.
You can either opt for Grass to hit Swampert and Rhyperior, or you can opt for Ice to slap Nidoqueen or something like Flygon.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Cool. So yeah, Swampert also it has Scald, so that's awesome. I love that move. Other than that,
Although
yeah. Other than that, it's just it's bulky Swampert. It doesn't really get up to any choice band stuff, does it?
it
It
definitely
can.
can.
Oh,
It can. It
It's a
easily
good
can.
lure creature. Yeah,
I've never
but
seen it used. Does
I don't think
it?
it garners much usage. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is respectable.
yeah. Once in a lifetime you see it, and then you're gonna run away maybe or
Mm.
not, depending on what you have switched in.
Right.
Rhyperior is kind of like uh, I guess it's kind of like a Swampert in that sense. It's like a very bulky stealth rocking ground type. It's more offensively potent, and oh, it's much better against Togekiss, obviously. So,
Yes.
but does Rhyperior ever get up to like pure offense? Because again, I mean, it can still be offensive with a stealth rock set, unlike something like Swampert, because Rhyperior's attack stat is so huge and it has stab Earthquake and stab Stone Edge or Rock Blast if you're trying to nail like sub Zapdos. But does Rhyperior ever get more offensive than a standard Stealth Rock set? Because I've never really seen like a sub set or an SD set or choice band or anything.
Yeah, I think it's
Not
pretty limited in that regard. Like in terms of popularity, I'd probably gauge it at the same level that offensive Swampert sets are at.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there was this really old sample that's since been deleted with like a CB Rhyperior.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Oh
the
yeah, I
opponent.
remember
Remember
that.
that one? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
opponent assumes that you're setting up rocks, and bang, you use that huge attack stat to use, and probably nail kill. But the element of surprise is definitely a thing for sure, but I think the traditional rock sets are more consistent for sure.
Really
Solid
reliable.
rock, you
Yeah.
have a million things. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great one of my favorites for sure.
What I like about Rhyperior is that its huge physical bulk Like earlier we mentioned like CB Flygon and its really strong outrage because there aren't a ton of steals in the tier, and the few steals that do exist, only Bronzong can really take its Earthquake. But what I like about Rhyperior is that against something like Druddigon, which has an even stronger outrage, then obviously it's not walling them all day, but it can tank them really well, especially if you run Protect on it and really squeeze every bit of leftovers you can out of it. So that huge natural defense stat really goes a long way.
Even the special defense isn't bad. Like
Yeah.
versus
If you run
like
like
Raikou.
if you run
Yeah,
special defense EVs, then because of solid rock, then HP ices just
right.
bounce off.
It's
Yeah,
doing like high 20s, I think, which is really manageable in
It's
offense
crazy.
versus offense games.
Yeah, I
yeah.
when I played a game, and I switched my Spadef Rhyperior into a Specs Kingdra locked into Dragon Pulse, just because I knew it was gonna bounce off, and the Kingdra switched. I was so happy that I forced
That's
Kingdra out with
hilarious.
Rhyperior. It was awesome. Uh, Also, there's Rhyperior's. I think Rhyperior has the strongest non-stab Dragon Tail in the tier. Like way stronger than Nidoqueen. So like in addition to
Right.
like phasing things around, then you're really like smacking the switch in. So I really appreciate that about it. Uh,
Something I like is the benefit of hitting Flygon,
yeah,
which
that's a really
naturally
good without
deals with
running Ice
down.
Punch. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because Ice Punch kind of sucks against everything else, but
yeah.
that's really nice. Okay, so next up we have Sharpedo, which has Speed Boost and Life Orb and Water and Dark Stab, and then you top it off with Ice. Is special. I mean, Sharpedo is Sharpedo, and we'll get to the teams it's on later. But like, what's more popular, physical or special? It's got to be special, right? Because the base power of Hydro Pump is so much higher than Waterfall, and there are a lot more naturally physically bulky Pokemon in the tier.
Yeah,
That's a
this one's right up your alley, man.
difficult. To me, it's a difficult question because it there are reasons why physical can be better because it's easier to flinch down the Bronzong with Waterfall since it does more since all of Bronzongs are like specially defensive than having to flinch it down with Dark Pulse which does less and well, the flinch chance is the same but the damage output matters and sometimes Waterfall can be better and the best situation is you are Sharpedo against Mian Shao, and you gotta hit the Hydro Pump, where
Mm,
you don't need to hit the Waterfall.
mm.
It just hits. It just hits always.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a situation where you have, because when you have Dark Pulse as your Dark Stab instead of Crunch, then you have a much easier time cleaning up against things like Qwilfish, which has Intimidate in this gen finally, and what's it called, Slowbro, and of course
Yeah,
Hydro Pump just lets you take out Swampert so much more easily. And of course, you can go flinch fishing against things like Suicune with Dark Pulse, whereas you can't really do that with Waterfall. But you're saying it's closer to a 50-50 than just the clear superior special set?
I think so. To me, at least. Mostly because there are teams where you stake up on special attackers, and then you want the Sharpedo to be physical,
right.
just so you aren't walled by special walls in case your strat didn't work out so well.
Hmm.
I was going
Okay.
to mention that like it's a lot of it's dependent on the breakers you pair alongside it. And naturally, you'll see it with spikes as well, which really aids it in wall breaking. They might have like low raw base power compared to some other Pokemon here, but with the spikes, it's absolutely deadly as a late game Pokemon.
Mm. And I guess it does have that higher attack stat, so I will admit that I do love just being able to Ice Beam a healthy Druddigon and just watching it drop, but I also don't really love having to Hydro Pump, half the things you're supposed to be able to kill, so. Yeah. All right. Okay. So we went over Flygon. Does Slowbro is a Slowbro's? Oh wait, no. I totally skipped over a bunch of Pokemon. Mienshao is another fighter. I mean, fast, regenerator, life orb, high jump kick, U-turn, amazing. Lots of options. Weavile is kind of slept on, but kind of really dangerous too. The tier is surprisingly not that well equipped for it. Is there anything we need to know about Weavile?
So I remember there was this one game in UPL where it was a Weavile versus a Qwilfish, and usually a lot of ST variants of Weavile will run Lumbering, for the free setup on stuff like Scalds, Thunderwaves. So it ended up taking that exact same trait, and then with the combination of like Ice Shard, Night Slash, and Low Kick, it completely ended the game. Like straight up 6-0 at lead. Because, the Qwilfish went down right away. It definitely has that potential to snowball out of control.
Yeah, what really is the big difference is that Lumberry is way more common than it used to be in the past. In the past, people usually ran Life Orb, because Weavile without Life Orb, it deals like it's only a free to KO against Blastoise at +2, which is kinda weak if you're at +2. But since a lot of Blastoise sometimes don't run Roar anymore, it just sets up, dodges the burn, maybe crit Night Slashes it to death. And Qwilfish is another target with Lumberry. Wisp-Mew is another target with Lumberry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, anything with status. You can go
Shards,
so far.
really good
Yeah.
speed control options in the tier.
Yeah. So I remember very early on when Hail was around, a Weavile destroyed, and I honestly I thought it kind of disappeared after that. I mean, I know it's got that fast Night Slash, but you guys never find it like struggling for power, like struggling to finish off a Mew with Night Slash or something?
Yeah, it can struggle definitely against
For
that.
sure.
Yeah.
If you're Lumberry, then you definitely struggle finishing a Mew off. Definitely if you have your Lumberry being burnt already due to having taken some status. But it can run the CB. It has gained some more popularity in the past, even with a move that I haven't seen in the past at all on it, which is Beat Up, which makes perfectly sense to run sometimes. Since if you want to offensively check a sub Calmine Raikou, then you just switch in on the sub and just beat up the living hell out of it.
Great exchange.
I enjoy that. Next up, we have Roserade, who kind of speaks for itself because we got over sleep powder, really strong stab, leaf storm. Sludge bomb stab is really really nasty in this tier, considering there's no Heatran around to switch in easily, and it hits a lot of common grass resist. Like earlier, we mentioned Shaymin gets sometimes annoyed by all the flyings and the fires, but Roserade has a sludge bomb that those guys really don't want to switch into. And of course, spikes on bulkier sets, T-spikes on more offensive sets. Broken Sleep in Gen 5. Just a great Pokemon. And honestly, the only thing I really want to mention about Roserade is that I'm really surprised it's ranked this low. I mean, I know this is still a high ranking, all things considered, but I always thought of it as one of the defining Gen 5 UU Pokemon. And it kind of surprises me to see it like below like Weavile and Sharpedo, who are great and all, but especially Sharpedo. But I would put Raid in like A+ for sure, like definitely up there with Shaymin. What do you guys think about that?
I think if we were to redo the rankings, I know I'd agree with you that it's right alongside Shaymin because both Mons' pros and cons are really similar, based on what they provide. And Roserade has just a ton of utility. Black White Sleep, setting up your hazards of choice. Although it does suck that you can't combine spikes and leaf storm. I think it is.
Yeah, it's spikes and leaf storm and sleep powder and spikes.
And sleep powder. Yes.
Yeah.
That bit definitely does suck, but it provides a ton for any one team. And honestly, that's why it's more splashable than, Shaymin, which you just compared it to.
Yeah, the T-Spike's absorption alone is crazy. I remember seeing a lot of games like where there are a bunch of Pokemon like Mew and Shaymin stacked together, and they don't have a poison type to absorb T-Spikes, and then they just kind of lose as soon as Nidoqueen or something lays them down, or Roserade itself. And that's I'm really paranoid about T-Spikes, and it's one of the many, many reasons I love Rose. And of course, its ability to set hazards itself. It's crazy. So, and with so many waters in the tier, then you're constantly finding opportunities. So, Roserade is underrated here for sure. Anything else on Rose? Any fun weather ball stuff?
Oh, it doesn't run Weather Ball at all. Like, it doesn't have really space on rain teams.
Oh, that sucks.
You're better off using another abuser because the low bulk and even like speed stat. Like you'd rather be on rain, for example. You'd rather be using like another Swift Swim Pokemon.
I guess there's no Heatran, Alolan, and Rain Weather Ball. As sad as that is.
Not really.
Yeah.
But what you can do is run offensive rows without setting up hazards. It's something
Oh, that's
I
a great
used
set.
to
That's
do
a
a
really
lot.
great set. Yeah, like just what sleep powder, stabs, and then like HP fire or synthesis.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I don't you guys know this of course, but for the viewers, there aren't a whole lot of steals in this tier. So you can just imagine how much or hidden power boosted by Life Orb would do to Bronzong. I think it's almost a 2K after rocks.
It definitely
Not
comes
confirmed
close.
correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
If
close.
it's life orb, then definitely. Yeah. Even against the bulkiest Zong.
Yeah, which is huge. Of course, given the lack of steals in the tier, so it's
And
very
yeah,
potent
plus
break.
you. What makes it even crazier is that you get to sleep Zong, and
Yeah,
make you could potentially bust through it yourself. So yeah, the steals. I mean, you have Bronzong, you have Cobalion, who you really don't want to switch into a Leaf Storm, let alone an HP Fire, and then you
same
have
with Empoleon.
Empoleon, who doesn't resist Leaf Storm, and that's really it. You don't have a. Oh, I guess
Guaranteed, I get.
Duran is
Yeah,
like
hidden power.
technically viable, but I never see Duran in UU ever. So
I used
yeah,
to use it a lot, just when Black White was like a live meta.
yeah.
It's a niche pick for sure,
Yeah, stick to RU if you want that. Speaking of
for sure.
RU, and speaking of a lack of steals that is abused, next up we have the king of RU, which is Druddigon, and we've gone over Druddigon already, so we don't need to linger on it too much. But it's got those cool rock sets with Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin. It can run a really really nasty choice band set. I mean, its fire punches and outrages are just vicious. And another cool application is that it has Mold Breaker Stealth Rock because there are some teams, and we'll get to this, but there are some teams that really don't want rocks to go up, but they don't want to use a spinner, so they just try to prevent it with Zatu. And with Mold Breaker, Stealth Rock, Druddigon, then you just set up right through Magic Bounce. It's awesome. And I remember those being really popular because those Volt Turn teams with Zatu, they really hinge on rocks just not going up at all. They'll switch Zatu into Rhyperior and everything, and they'll
Oh
often
yeah,
get away with it with huge bulk and Grass Knot and Roost and stuff like that. But with Druddigon, it's like, well, I have a free turn, and you can't not give Druddigon a free turn because of its great pure Dragon typing and its huge bulk. And the rocks go up, and the game is over almost. So that's a pretty big niche, especially because you can still chip things with Rocky Helmet even if you're a Mold Breaker. Is there anything else you guys want to add to that?
I know in recent tournament showings, people have been messing around with Dragon Gem on it, which
Yeah, yeah.
is superior to Choice Band in that you can set up rocks. You're not as committal as Choice Band is, but you do get that one really powerful hit off. Boosted by the gem, of course, and you can use it on like a Dragon Spikes type stack team, or just good offense in general that appreciates something like Bronzong being heavily chipped by a gem boosted outreach.
Yeah, and the flexibility, gems are so much, and they're so good in this year. And I always feel like they're underexplored somehow. But
For sure.
like with the Calm Mind, Aura Sphere Fighting Gem Raikou, which just sounds amazing. But yeah, with that, then you have that big power of outrage and the flexibility to get up rocks. So there's Druddigon is like the best example of how you can kind of tweak a very versatile Pokemon to your team's needs and have it succeed no matter what, just because its inherent traits are so good. So that's Druddigon. Then we have Flygon, who we kind of went over, Band, Scarf. Never really seen anything else. Don't think it would be worth it. Slowbro doesn't get used as much. I'm sure like regenerate. I remember it got used a little bit, but and regenerate is great. Instant recovery is great, but it just feels like it doesn't pack as much utility as the other waters in one way or another. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
I
Yeah.
know in like more recent gens, its flaw of being weak to both U-turn and Volt Switch has been exposed heavily.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you combine that with the spike stack, layout of the tier, then you nullify even Regenerator, which makes it have a less ceiling more so than it does in certain other tiers.
Yeah, and when everything's U-turning, then it can't even check those like Darmanitan and Victini as well, even if they're running just the physical sets, to say nothing of Victini popping a Thunder or something. So, Slowbro, you think it's a little, I think it might be a little overrated on this list. I mean, I don't know if I'd put it ahead of, let's say, Qwilfish and, other things we've talked about like Bronzong and Umbreon.
Well, it should definitely be B plus.
Yeah.
With Slowking, yeah, I'd agree.
Alongside Slowking.
Yeah, Slowbro is A minus right below Flygon, so this is probably a little different than what it should be.
I it has some merits which people don't really use it for. For example, when Windscreen wasn't really a thing, you could use Carmine Slowbro to beat Crocunes
Right.
with Psyshock. But other than that, it really isn't used much. It really doesn't do so well in the more aggressive metagame we have right now than in the past. It didn't even do well in the past since well, it did a bit better since Hail was there and the Regenerator was kind of good for it, and you could run crazy sets like Blizzard on it.
Hmm. As a setup on, I always saw Suicune as superior to it.
That's true.
Yeah. So then we have Tornadus, which you guys have mentioned runs doesn't spam Hurricane as much. I mean, it can, but its most popular set in UU, and this is just another one of the many cool things about this tier, is that its most popular set is Flying Gem with Acrobatics, which is
Love
just
that set.
awesome. It's really fast. It's surprisingly strong. I mean, it's still got a great attack stat. It's got good fighting coverage with Superpower or Hammer Arm, and then it has things like Priority Taunt and Tailwind and U-Turn and Taunt Knockoff. So it's got a lot of stuff it can do. But it's I find like nowadays I don't see it thrown on teams as haphazardly as in the past. And I guess that it doesn't really fill a real defensive niche. Like Flygon has the Stealth Rock resist and the fire and ground immunity, and Slowbro just feel or sorry, not Slowbro. Tornadus just feels like it kind of doesn't switch into too much. So you really got to get something out of it, and it doesn't have the pure power to just melt things like say a Druddigon. So, would you guys say that Tornadus is not what it once was?
I think it's still potent on offensive teams because I'll just list a few checks here. Say if you have like a Rhyperior, you can run Grass Knot to bypass that. If you have a Bronzong, Heat Wave, if you can fit that, is doing a ton. And naturally, I think Zapdos and Raikou would be like the big checks to it, but they still don't appreciate taking, like something like a Rocks plus a Gem boosted Acrobatics or even a Hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely holds a special place on offensive teams. We mentioned the great compatibility it has with Kingdra, which is
That's true.
probably most of the reason
Ooh,
why it's really good.
because you have the priority rain dance. That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And you can even run Damp Rock on it to have it last longer.
that's really
You'll
sweet.
see that on full rain teams, yeah.
All
Damprock
right,
and Rain Dance for sure.
all right. I underrated Tornadus. That's cool though. All right, so next up we have Nidoking. We went over Nidoqueen and how Nidoking separates itself from Nidoqueen. Stronger, but harder to fit on teams because that defensive profile just isn't as big. I am biased because spikes, but then again, this whole tier is very much centered around spikes. So I am really surprised to see Qwilfish this low. I would put it up. It's like Roserade in that I think it should be higher. So, what do you guys think of Qwilfish? I mean, I like there's generally two flavors in most tiers. You have the suicide spiking lead, and then you have the bulky mid game Pokemon. And in this tier, then it's really good at that because it has Intimidate. So, what's going on with Qwilfish?
Well, I feel like it's fine where it is because compared to Roserade, which can take hits from one of the most common pokes in the tier, which is Zapdos, as well as it could take an Air Slash unless it specs. Qwilfish doesn't really want to do that. It's way more passive than Roserade. It has way more issues it can bring you to the team. For example, it has a ground weakness, meaning that it doesn't appreciate having a Nidoqueen coming in, or a King for that matter. And, well, it's like, it has spikes, which makes it good, but otherwise, it's difficult to say. I don't know. It's like decent. It's the best, like I would say. I wouldn't even mind if it was B plus. But I feel like Qwilfish issue is it's just sometimes too passive to be used over Roserade, even if it has Intimidate and the fire resistance.
In my
And
experience, it's a great like fighting check as well. I think the utility is mainly why it serves, amongst the other A minus ones. Thunder Wave is great for the obvious reasons. You can punish, any overzealous switch attempts from stuff like Zapdos and Raikou. You also have like Destiny Bond even, which I haven't seen too much, but it's definitely a cool pick for sure. Taunt to mess with, slower mons. So I think the utility is definitely up there. It serves as like a bulky alternative to Roserade. Usually, if I'm trying to build a Spike Stack team, I'll usually go with one of the two, depending on my preferred style. Like if I want something more offensive, I'll go with a Roserade. If I'm preferring something defensive, on the other hand, I'll usually commit to a Qwilfish.
All right, that's fair. All right, Bronzong. We've gone over a lot of what it does. So just defense. Whoops, I scrolled down. Defensive, stealth rock, protect, toxic, that kind of thing. Spike's immune, stealth rock resistant, really valuable. Good check to Shaymin, and just generally hard to KO. Bit on the passive side. Anything you guys want to mention for Zong? Because it's a fairly self-explanatory poke. You don't really see offensive Zongs like you do in DPP.
Not really, no. You could maybe run some trick shenanigans, but even then, it's just a wasted move slot and a wasted item.
The nerf of Boom in Gen 5 definitely has something to do with it.
That's true.
All right, so Bronzong self-explanatory. Umbreon is a Pokemon you'd think you'd only see on stall teams, but you really don't. It is a great stall Pokemon, but I feel like I've seen it on a good amount of like more balanced and bulky offense stuff as well, just because the wish support is really nice and Heal Bell is just lovely.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I used to use it a lot as like a blanket special check to a bunch of things in the past, but I think as of now, I'm not as high on it because on paper it does like I said check a lot of special mons, but with foul play as your only option to really check those mons, some threats like even Raikou really don't mind a foul play if they're running subcall mine. Zapdos for sure does not mind a foul play, and I feel like it's generally on the back foot a lot. We previously mentioned how a lot of more passive Pokemon in the tier don't really have an easy time operating, and Umbreon is definitely another one of those examples.
Yeah. It also is like the best setup bait for Togekiss.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Hates running into taunt users and way more stuff. Setup bait for Scrafty, Heracross, Mienshao switches in for free. Cobalion switches in for free and sets up. All that stuff.
I've never heard anyone call it Cobalion until now, but I just realized that's absolutely how you say it and not Cobalion. But Cobalion is in fact our next Pokemon on the list, and it got such a great speed tier, such great typing, and such a great move pool, and I feel like I never see it for some reason.
There are good reasons why you don't see it so much.
I mean, I know its attack stat is really disappointing and all, but its typing is just so good, and its move pool. And
You're committed to set up like a Swords Dance at some point to get something out of it. I know something I've messed with is Stone Edge plus Rock Jump, which is really nice if you get the move to hit, of course. Again, in this gen, I might be I might be in the minority here, but I know that I haven't preferred Iron Head a lot. That I usually just run something like Double Dance with close combat and Stone Edge.
And sorry.
That's fine. What I want to say is there are reasons why it wasn't used in the past much because Slowbro was way more common. For example, if you run like Dual Step, SD, and what the most common move was in the past was Substitute as filler move instead of Stone Edge, Slowbro just walls you all day. You can't do anything, nothing.
It is stonewalled by quite a few, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Stone Edge. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think a big reason is given how omnipresent Snorlax is in the tier, Cobalion is not even a great check to it because Earthquake I think is a 3 KO, even from the bulkier sets. So that definitely holds Cobalion back a lot, especially when it is pressured to get a Swords Dance up at some point throughout the game to do something.
Then you have the Scar fighting types, Heracross, Mienshao. Then you have Weavile, unironically, because it runs almost always low kick, which is almost a guaranteed one-hit KO. Don't remember really the role anymore. Or it does survive barely, but with all the hazards, It will never be at 100%.
It's interesting you
And
mentioned that because on paper, Cobalion seems like it checks Weavile, but just given how low kick, I just ran the calc. Low kick from Life Orb at least does like 80 min, and then if you're running like Lumber, it still does like 60 min, which is just all you need, given how limited of a schedule Cobalion operates on in most games.
So it just doesn't get enough done? Because I saw a fighting gem set, which seemed pretty nice to get like that extra burst of damage on something like a Swampert. But yeah.
it can get things done if you have the necessary support for it. I remember having built some really crazy team for Pearl, I believe, like 4 years ago, where the team's thing was it passed Nasty Plot from Togekiss to Rock Polish Special Cobalion or Qwilfish, with Rock Polish, Focus Blast, Flash Cannon. I don't remember the fourth move. I don't remember what it was anymore. And it has like Steel Gem too, and
Oh, nice.
it's there are like neat things you can pull off with it. It can run calm mindsets. What is seen way more common nowadays is like some Protect Toxic sets with Volt Switch and HBIs,
I was
so
gonna say,
Glider does
Does
Molding.
Volt Switch never get used? It seems like even if it's not killing stuff itself, it can do some cool stuff with rocks, taunt, Volt Switch, CC.
I
It
remember running it
can.
on one team, but it's middling at best. I haven't really found it to be too great.
I guess it doesn't really threaten the grounds enough to be a good Volt Switch user. That's unfortunate.
Something interesting I've used in the past is I love resist berries in general, but Chopple's a really good choice on it
Yeah.
since you prevent stuff like Scarf Heracross or Scarf Mienshao, low kick from Weavile from picking you off.
Mm.
It's
All
just
right.
another trade you can go for.
Yeah. All right.
Whoa.
That's yeah. So Suicune, I gotta say, I did not think I would see Suicune this low since the tier does not have Abomasnow. What's going on there? I mean, it's still obviously a great Pokemon, but
Again, it can be really passive, which is a big issue. Then you have spikes, stealth rocks, maybe T spikes. That adds all up to it, like the subtech Coon. If you cannot prevent T spikes, it's literally useless.
Okay.
Or if you get randomly burned by a Scald because you just had to switch into a Scald from Blastoise, useless.
Dead eye.
Crocoon is really passive since sleep talk mechanics suck, and offensive Coon sometimes lacks power against stuff like Snorlax to really take it out, or Umbreon.
I remember Dodman had an old offense with Calm Mind 3 attack Suicune. And I remember while I was testing out, it was very underwhelming versus exactly what you said, Snorlax and the like.
all
I
right.
will say, though, that I think this is the tier that Vincoon is at its best. Um, I've just seen it spiral out of control in so many games where people, maybe relax versus it a bit.
Mhm.
Because it only takes, one or two of those turns for it to snowball into, prime
Oh,
form.
I really disagree with it because I feel like it's not as good as people think it is in this tier. Since Blastoise should, if you ask me, always run raw,
I
just
agree.
because
It should always
of
convert.
random sub DD Kingdras and other stuff. And it's such a big killer for Subtech Coon.
Something interesting is Roar doesn't go through Protect in this gen. So, I mean, I've seen some games with that exact scenario where the Suicune user, just tries to fish for a burn on it. And if the Blastoise is running Roar, then it probably doesn't have Refresh. It's pretty strapped for slots. But yeah, that situation is it's a weird one for sure. It can really go either way, even if the Blastoise does have Roar.
Oh, I forgot the one set that's cool on Suicune. It's Calm Mind Roar.
Oh yeah,
Be it offensively approached by having no rest at all, or defensively with a heal bell in the back. It can be so annoying for any kind of team. Offensive teams where you have taken out the electric or the grass type, or even stall teams. Because if the Suicune is at +6/+6 and your answer is a Zapdos, well,
and good luck to you.
don't, unless it's War Zapdos, then you maybe are saved by it. But it can be really good against some teams.
High highs and low lows, I think, is the name of the game with Suicune.
Yeah, that sums it up perfectly.
That's good. All right, we're not going to go through all the B plus pokes. We're just going to skim over them, the big ones. We've mentioned most of their niches in passing, just the B plus guys, really. Because, I mean, once you get to B, you see, like, I'm sure there's some stuff with Healing Wish, or sorry, Lunar Dance Cresselia. I know some people like Specs PZ. I know Scolipede, we're going to get to a team with that later. But most of the other stuff you don't really see besides the very occasional Xatu and Hitmontop. So we're mostly going to go over just Sableye has that niche of Will-O-Wisping, recovering, being kind of like a ghost Mew. Slowking, I gotta admit, I've never really seen it, but I imagine it's just like it's Slowking. It's not going to surprise you. I mean, it's a Slowbro with more special defense and less defense, and it's got Nasty Plot and Dragon Tail. Crobat, I haven't seen used as much, which I kind of like because I never thought it was very good. I thought it was not as good as a Stealth Rock weak Pokemon should be. I mean, it's a great check to Roserade and doesn't really do much else, in my opinion. Darmanitan is
Heracross.
Heracross. I know, but it's the Stone Edge vulnerability is like I would prefer to just run
Yeah.
a better Pokemon instead. Then there's Darm, which is like a fully physical Victini with crazy power, Scarf, Band, Life Orb, crazy strong. P2 with Eviolite. I know some people have liked instead of Trace, and they like download on it. I remember Reach Zero had a team with that. Umfuga had a team with that more recently. And like because Porygon2 with Eviolite, even without bulk investment, it's still crazy bulky. And the power boost from special attack investment and stab tri attack, and as proven by Togekiss to be a great weapon. And of course, the download boost can be really nasty. So like it can be a surprisingly adept offensive poke too. But just
Something I
as a
found hilarious was sorry to cut you off. Something
oh,
I
go
found
ahead.
hilarious was the use of return on Porygon 2.
Does it
The
really use it?
bypass like Celsium Raikou, it's just comical to me. I remember seeing that live for the first time and just laughing my head off.
That
Yeah, I used it in the past. There was like some black and white UU tournament where Victini, Chandler, and Hale was banned. And if you
I
run
hosted
Return
that
and
one.
Shadow
I hosted
Bullet, you
that one. Yeah,
cover.
I remember.
You hosted that
I
one?
hosted that one specifically because Coco kept saying Gen 5 UU would be quite literally perfect. His exact words. I named the tournament the Quite Literally Perfect Black and White UU Tournament. And
Wonderful.
I banned Hale, Victini, and Chandelure. And so, yeah, anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I ran literally Return and Shadow Ball on P2 because it covered a Subcalmine Raikou and Kofag at the same time. Without having to talk the Kofag.
That's
It's
beautiful.
creativity at its finest.
That was crazy. The teams back then I made were so crazy for that meta game because you didn't really need a fire resistance anymore because the two best fire chips were gone.
Hmm.
All right. Then we have Azelf, which I guess gets used on some rare offense and rain teams, but I don't really think it's very good. Then there's Blastoise, which attempts to spin and can roar stuff like Suicune out, and kind of
Oh,
stand in the way of rain. And Kingdra, which decent, I guess.
it's
And
the best spinner in the tier two. Just to make that clear.
yeah, but it's
Agreed.
still not very good at spinning, though, is the thing.
The thing with
I'm
And
Blastoise is I see it more of like a necessary evil. I don't like really putting it that way, but I do have a team with both Victini and Zapdos, both of whom are obviously weak to rocks. And Blastoise was something that I saw as a necessity alongside both of them.
yeah, I get what you mean. Like, it's not something you love putting on a team, but sometimes you just need to make the team work. Then there's Empoleon, who I actually like a lot. Not just because Gen 4 is cooler than Gen 1, but because it has that Kingdra resist and it can go offensive, it can go defensive, it's got a hell of a move pool. And yeah, we went over why Empoleon is awesome. And then there's Gligar, who just stonewalls Heracross and is just and Flygon and is pretty much impossible to kill in general. And it can do cool things like rocks and U-turn. So it's like I like U-turn on it because then it's a wall that gets in its more offensive teammates reliably as a result of its defensive utility. And I faced a set with knockoff, which I thought was really annoying. So
Oh, that is
yeah, so that's
sounds like
Gligar for you. So those are the B pluses, and everything else we kind of went over. So now I want to turn our attention to the sample teams, and for the reason that now we've gone over like what the big Pokemon and the tier are, and you generally get an idea of how they work. So I now want to mention the general team styles that are popular, and we have selected these teams. I mean, there are also sample teams if you go digging around in the ruins of Alfarum on Showdown, which I recommend you do. But we selected these just as our personal curated examples, so which show off not just the best Pokemon in the tier, but how they work together specifically. So we're going to start off with a team I made last year with a lot of help from Choolio because I had to play the tier suddenly. And it's a team with Mew, Snorlax, Rhyperior, Roserade, Cofagrigus, and Zapdos. And this basically, as I said earlier, this is a tier with Zapdos and no Sand Special Defense boosted T-Tar, therefore Zapdos is incredible. It's pretty perfect logic, and it just has a bunch of good Pokemon together. And like we said many times, and spikes are great here. And we have Snorlax and Rhyperior come together to check fires, and which makes up for a lack of a water type. There's spikes, there's spin blocking, there's offense, there's a stall breaking Mew. So this is a pretty good example of balance, and I just want to say for the record that it was not my egotistical idea to put this team in. And then we have a more extreme form of spiking offense, which is Coolio's Sharpedo Spikes team, which you see has that's a Sash Qwilfish there. It's not the bulky kind. It still does Intimidate because it's a great ability, but it's got the offensive Shaymin that we talked about. It's got another Zapdos because Zapdos is just incredible. It's got another Rocking Rhyperior, which is incredible as well. It's got another Trick Room Cofagrigus, and then it's got the Sharpedo cleanup. So you see it operates at a much faster pace. Then we have Coolio's Stall team, which I'll let him elaborate on more, but he's got the Suicune, Umbreon, Zong. So kind of those Pokemon that don't really work too well on a lot of teams outside of Stall, but once in a while they come together. Then there's bulky Nidoqueen, there's Hitmontop, and there's of course Zapdos. So he made an RMT of this team, which I'll link in the description. But if you want to talk about this team a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I originally made it just to play one opponent like 4 or 5 years ago. It was Reach Zero, and the idea was just to simply have one really good Pokemon and a really annoying one in form of Suicune, be able to set up and just beat his setup sweepers usually. And it works perfect because it has the 2 setup sweepers in bulky forms, with Charge Beam Zapdos being really uncommon. I don't remember having ever seen it seriously before I used it, but maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. And Calm Mind Raw Suicune, which just owns opposing Calm Mind users. And then you have the real defensive backbone with Umbreon, which is self-explanatory, and Bronzong just checking stuff like Shaymin, Roserade, ground types, the Nidoqueen to absorb T-Spikes, and the kind of odd Hitmontop set I run with Bulk Up and Low Kick, because even if it's not used as much these days, Curse Legs is so annoying. It's such a threat. Sometimes it can just flat out win games without doing much except for clicking Curse and attacking. So you're gonna need Bulk Up, Low Kick for that. And other than that, I don't want to talk so much about it because I've written about it. Just check out the RMT, I guess.
You also have it's a great example of creativity because you also have a really, really fun Zapdos set there.
Yeah, I don't really believe anyone used that. It's like Charge Beam, T-Bolt, Roost, HP Flying.
Perfect for the team.
It's just it's such a cool set, though. You have T-Bolt Roost, and then you throw on the boost of Charge Beam and the second stab of HP Flying. It's wonderful. That's one of the most beautiful things about Pokemon, I think. So that's our Stall excerpt, because like has been mentioned, it's hard to pull off, but once in a while, and with very specific stuff going toward it, then it can be really, really threatening and tough to break. So now we have 3 teams from Axel, which have been used over the last several years. So first you have the Scolipede team, if you want to mention that one. I guess it's kind of conceptually similar to Coolio's team. with the fast Spiker lead, and then the Trick Room Cofagrigus, and the Stealth Rocking Rhyperior, but then you have some different cleanup options.
Right. I was going to say just that, that it is in fact very similar to Coolio's team that we just covered. So we have the Scolipede at lead. Just the aim is to set up hazards, endeavor anything you can once you're brought down to your stash. Just get any sort of lead you can. The Rhyperior is self-explanatory. You have Dragon Tail to make extra use of the hazards on the field, and then its stab combo is pretty good. Right alongside Dragon Tail, you can hit pretty much everything you need. Cofagrigus blocks spin, so really good cleaner with Nasty Plot and Trick Room, like we said. Kingdra falls into the same boat, except it's on the opposite spectrum in terms of speed. The Rain Dance set is really deadly here. I know when I've used the team many times, the Kingdra is usually the last mon standing on the field. Togekiss is Specs here, which I did allude to earlier when we were covering viability rankings. Tri-Attack obviously stings for soft checks like Raikou and Zapdos, since you're doing like about 70 to them, disregarding procs. So it's very valuable to free up, the late game cleaners. And then Scarf Moxie Heracross is self-explanatory. You have spikes on the field and you try to, just get some late game momentum here with Moxie. Funny story. I have had a game, a test game. I wish it was for something official, but I actually ran out of close combat PowerPoints, so I ended up sweeping somebody with Moxie Struggle.
That's beautiful.
With spikes on the field, it just got the job done.
That's beautiful. Okay,
Yeah,
so
my favorite teams for sure. Very easy to use.
So yeah, it's very very straightforward and strong, and as long as you don't get messed up by like opposing Togekiss, who's forever the most stupid thing ever, yeah, it would be a lot easier if it didn't handle Cofagrigus, because everything else just gets cleaned up. But that's just an example of how great Togekiss is, and of course you have your own, which is monstrous.
If you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah, of course, of course. So then you have the Nidoqueen team with the one you mentioned with Zapdos and Victini and the Blastoise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Blastoise was a sort of necessity here, given that obviously the two top-ranked mons in Zapdos and Victini are weak to rocks. And then the rest of the team is pretty balanced. You have like a Nidoqueen for general breaking purposes, the Snorlax, which is just great glue for this team. Soft checks a lot. It has Pursuit for Victini, and other threats as well. And then, the Scarf Sleep Talk Heracross, just to provide an out versus certain Sleep Powder or Sport ones. And, just general speed control for this team. It doesn't have a clear win con, which might seem odd to some, but, the combination of like Choice Band Victini or Nidoqueen, the goal in mind with this team is just to create, natural pressure and try to go for like, Scarf Heracross sweep or something of the like.
Kind of see where the game takes you. Yeah. Like I know there's a lot of those teams that they don't wind up having that late game sweeper, but they still manage to guy who just sets up a Calm Mind or something and sweeps. But just by naturally breaking down opposing counters, and then you just 1v1 everything else. Like Zapdos is one of the best examples of this, because the pool of Pokemon that can really answer is so limited, and they're going to get worn down throughout a game. So just having a Zapdos late game is going to give you an edge over the remaining Suicune or whatever's left. So, yeah. Then finally we have your Dragons team.
Yeah, so this is a team that I've actually made a few variants of. Rhyperior and Cofagrigus are pretty straightforward. We've mentioned what they provide for any particular team. The Togekiss on this particular team is Baton Pass and Nasty Plot. And if I've been playing in any formats, the EU team tours that run throughout the year, that ban Baton Pass, I'll just change it to Thunder Wave or Gale Ball. It works, just as well. And the last three slots, I've messed with variations specifically with these three. Like the Flygon is Scarf here. But I've messed with the combination of Ban Flygon plus Scarf Raikou. I've messed with like Choice Specs over Life Orb, Rain Dance on Kingdra. Kingdra and Raikou here are mainly, the big beneficiaries for Baton Pass Nasty Plot from Togekiss. And, something like Raikou, for example, that struggles to initially break through walls like opposing Rhyperior, can suddenly, start off with a lot of initial firepower if you Baton Pass a Nasty Plot to it. It's an interesting team. I know a lot of people have had success with this one in like their UU Classic runs. So just, Dragon Spam, the combination of Flygon and Kingdra, in a tier with limited steals and obviously no fairy types because it's black white. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just try to punch as many holes as you can. Find your route.
Nice. All right, so then now we will move over to. Sorry, my brain is frying. Okay, so we have 2 games here to show what the tier generally plays like, and we're gonna go back to Qwilio on this. So first is the one with him against. Well, they're both against FLCL, otherwise known as Watashi. This first one is from the first one we're going to go with is from 2020, and we've mentioned rain a lot, and this is an example of a rain team against of weather. Well, I mean, most teams are weatherless, but this one's got the Xatu stuff we've mentioned, alongside 2 Stealth Rock Weeks and Weavile and Victini, and then some other standards like Rhyperior, Roserade, and Mienshao. Pretty cool looking team. So can you take us through this? I'll just click play and you can do the same and go at your own pace.
Yeah, sure.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I just take a quick look at the preview, which was a bit scary since it's the Weavile, and if it is SD, that could be really annoying. But I didn't care and just led with Acelov anyway, because he would never lead it. And turn 1, I just go totally nuts and taunt, because I was like, okay, he's gonna expect me to rain dance, definitely, so may as well taunt. If he goes Xaru, yeah, doesn't matter. I can just go Tornadoes. And I catch him. Instead of going for rocks, I click Rain Dance. And instead of going through Raikou, I just blow up immediately, because I don't need rocks to win this game.
Mm.
So I go to Lidocolo, catch the KO. That also reveals that I'm jolly, because Adamant wouldn't have outsped Scarftini if he was Scarf, I believe. Not sure anymore. I'm really off with my speed here since I don't play regularly anymore.
No, that's how it works. If you're plus speed, if you're a Scarf base 100, then you need a plus speed nature to outrun Ludicolo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just sacks it, and he goes Xaru. I switched out because I didn't want to catch T-Wave, and I couldn't care about Raikou that much, and he just U-turns, which is great to me, because he goes Rhyperior, and I run a move that you don't usually see on Raikou, which is Weather Ball, and it just obliterated the Rhyperior. It was gone.
That's beautiful.
And now he goes Mienshao. I obviously had the choice. I either back it or I go Tornadoes, expecting the high jump kick. I just stayed in, because in case he U-turned to be a bit tricky, I could get a Thunder off. But he didn't. He just picked the KO.
Notice, by the way, speaking of how offensive this tier can be, I mean, this is obviously an extreme example because it's rain, but notice how it's turn 7 and so much stuff has dropped already, and the rain is still going. And like in Gen 4 UU, there's a similar complaint about rain, and I don't know how strong the sentiment is in Gen 5, but this would be a pretty strong argument for it.
Yeah, I can address more points later, because I don't think it's as good as people believe it is.
Mm.
But
yeah, sure, go
let's
ahead.
continue with the replay. Well, he goes Xaru on. Well, he just sacks it, because he can't risk Roserade since it tanks from 100%. And, well, just sack my Ludicolo. Doesn't do much this game anymore. Rain runs out. I have to go Tornadoes. And he goes to Weavile. I just Rain Dance. And here, it was an iffy turn. I don't remember if I ran Tailwind on this game anymore, but sometimes I run Tailwind on my Tornadoes too. But I didn't want him to be SD, so I stayed in and went for Hurricane instead. But he revealed to be Ice Punch and picked up the KO, meaning that I had to go to my Omog store and hope he isn't SD. Just Shell Smashed. He Ice Punches again, revealing that he is CB. And the next turn, why I clicked Hydro Pump is because HP Electric isn't guaranteed to one-hit KO Weavile. I don't even think it is a one-hit KO at all. It like misses out on a little bit. But I had to Hydro Pump, which sucked for me. But I hit, luckily, and that means I just win the game. I outspeed me and Chao. I KO Roserade with Ice Beam. I KO Misha with Ice Beam 2, didn't need to rely on Hydro Pump again. And that's really it. That's a really fast-paced game.
Earlier we
And
mentioned Shell smashing Omastar and Rain, and how that's the game if you pull it off. And that Mienshao was scarfed, and
Yeah, it was.
and you still outsped it because you smashed in Rain. It's crazy. So that's Rain for you. But that's yeah. So now should we go over to the second game, or is there something else?
I just want to address the points that there are way more counter plays to Rain than people think there are. For example, my team is really weak to Toxic Spikes. Like, it can win the game. I had a close game against Finchinator where I still almost won despite having T-Spikes on my field. And there are things like Empoleon. There is the massive use of Protect on a lot of pokes like Rhyperior, Blastoise, Snorlax, even Raikou nowadays, that can help postpone the Rain Sweeper or be able to take advantage of it. And there is stuff that even Ditto can actually screw Rain, despite it not being used at all. And then you have things like Scarf Raikou, Tailwind Offense. Like, again, Somalia's team, for example, is the best team against my Rain team. Like, I literally, unless they misplay, should never win against that with my Rain team. Never. Like, for real. And that's really it about Rain. So we can move on to the second game,
Sure.
which is from 2021.
Sure.
One last thing to note is like, we already mentioned how Kingdra is, arguably one of the best ones in the tier. Even running a Kingdra of your own, and if you have the space to run Timid on certain sets, you can do that. But I know a lot of Rain teams utilize like a modest Kingdra. So just having a Kingdra of your own can kind of reverse sweep or create some momentum at the least, which is incredibly valuable. There, like Choolio said, there definitely are outs to Rain. There are options in the builder, which have to take what you can get.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Second game.
Second game. Let's start at the preview again. His team was kind of odd to me because he had Rhyperior and Empoleon, so I knew that Rhyperior would be the rocker, since why else would he have Empoleon for? And I was scared that this was Specs Empoleon, because as you can see on my team, I don't really have an answer to that. It just kind of clicks Hydro Pump if I don't lead Raikou, Mienshao, or Victini. But I don't remember really what I led with. Oh, I led with Mienshao just to scout. Yeah, I remember. I led with Mienshao, he led with Rhyperior. But for some reason he switched out, although he could have easily gone for Stealth Rock. But he decided to go Xadu. I just fake out because I had it on the set. Which kind of reveals that if I would have been HBIs, or not going for fake out, instead straight for the high jump kick, could have maybe led him to believe I would be HBIs, since I have a Victini that he hasn't seen yet, and I have a Honchkrow, and both can kind of fall short against Liger, depending on its set. Well, Honchkrow definitely does, in the long run. But I fake out, I U-turn this turn, since I'm not sure if I can take it out with Stone Edge. Go to my Victini, he turns to going to his Snorlax, and as we mentioned earlier, Snorlax likes to trap Victinis, but he's not really gonna do that because I'm special and have Focus Blast, which deals a massive amount of damage for this thing, and he just suits, not doing what he wanted to do, only 27%. He's gonna tag here, since most common said, and they are always almost pro-tag. Now he's gonna switch out, I believe. Yeah, he's going to his own Victini, tanks the Focus Blast. I switch out, go to my Druddigon, not wanting to sack my Teeny yet, but he makes a good play, just going for the U-turn. Not really revealing anything. I just assumed at this point he's Scarf. And here I was scared that he's Bax Empoleon, going for Nice Beam, but instead he is Toxic, which was kind of weird to me since Bax Empoleon would have been really nice here. He just tags. I Focus Blast. I keep Focus Blasting. Never mind. I make a double. Yeah. I double, go to Druddigon on his Snorlax, and get my own rocks up, which you can see that Mold Breaker Druddigon camps in handy against the Xatu team without the spinner, meaning that his team is crippled and that his Rotom will take definitely chip damage as well as his Snorlax. And I switch out, go to my team again, because I have Grass Knot and can pick up the KO here. But I predict the Lags to come in, but instead he tries to sack the Xatu. And here just Blue Flare and hit. Luckily I missed the Focus Blast, otherwise I wouldn't have had this exchange here. And I go Mienshao because I can't fake out anything that is in front of me, which I do here just for a little bit of chip damage. With U-turn, I go to my Druddigon, barely tanking the Earthquake that's coming in, or that's going to be thrown at me, and having my Citrus Berry being activated. Which, well, it didn't really change much, but just to explain why I use it sometimes, I don't really have a reliable Victini check since my Druddigon is offensive, and Citrus Berry allows me to kind of be a little bit more healthy in case I need to barely take a second hit from a Scarftini. I won't obviously be taking a second hit from a CVTini, but at least I can sort of soft check Scarftinis. Anyway, here I just Earthquake. Damage. He picks me up. I go to my... I don't remember it anymore. Mienshao, yeah, because free high jump kick. He has nothing to switch into. And then he goes Teeny. I don't want to risk him being Scarf since I don't see any item. And the damage previously on the Druddigon was Scarf damage. At least it was max attack and not choice banned. So I go to my Queen. And to my surprise, he is using Fire Gem, which I haven't really seen on Victini at all. But it just blasted my Nidoqueen away to different dimensions. And here comes the key player, the Haunch Crow. Well, since I know he isn't Scarf, I have a free Brave Bird here. I just go for it, even knowing that the Empoleon comes in. Deal decent damage. Well, even more decent for resistance, 44. And here I go for Roost on his Protect, being at full health again. Going for Superpower, picking up the KO, meaning that that he has to go Rotom now, since it's the only thing that can reliably switch into this. Now, I don't remember the exact role anymore. I believe I had a chance to KO, I don't know. But I went for Sucker Punch in retrospect. I should have gone Raikou. And because my Raikou was pretty useless this endgame. It was Scarfku, because I was a bit afraid of rain teams. And it didn't really do much. Even if he went Snorlax on my... even if he went with Snorlax on my Raikou, I just spam T-Bolt and basically achieved the same thing. Since if he would be tricking my Haunch Crew, I win guaranteed. In case he tried to play Sucker Punch mind games. And if he didn't, well then, just died to Sucker Punch. After the second time it took Stealth Rocks. But here I Sucker Punch do only 80% damage and die to Volt Switch. Meaning that he dies the next time he tries to switch in. Now he goes to his Snorlax since I can't go to my Raikou here. I'm forced to Mienshao. Go to my Shao, he protects here. I just fake out because it's safe, no matter what. And now he goes for the double tech since it's the only out for him. Well, he could have gone, or he could have sacked the Rotom, but he didn't. And here just U-turn and win.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah, so that's offense for you. I mean, even this game with more like bulky Pokemon, then it's a very bang tier. So constant action. You will not be bored when you play this tier, and every turn is important, and I think that's really cool. So that is more or less everything. I just wanted to ask if you guys have any underrated cool sets in Gen 5 UU for anyone who's inspired to get out there and try and build some teams. It's going to be a little hard if you're trying to get into this tier to find games because I would recommend going into the UU room or the Ruins of Alpha room and just asking. But if you're trying to fill the time in between your games by trying to build new teams, then what are some underrated sets that these kind folks can use besides like Fighting Gem or Sphere Raikou, because that one's awesome.
Well,
Julia, you go
I
first.
yeah, well, I have some. I have played a lot around. Like for the best Pokemon Zapdos, definitely try out HB Water on it. It's just an amazing move. You hit Rhyperior, Gligar, both Nidos. You hit even fire types like random Rotomedes. It catches so much stuff off guard because, well, Gligar will notice the damage output difference and HP Ice does way more than water. But the difference between Rhyperior and Nidoqueen, if they run for some reason both, and they try to sponge into potential HP grass, then you catch him really badly off guard with it. And other than that, there is not much I would suggest because I've used a lot of really gimmicky teams. I even made Shelgon Stalberg with Garbodor.
I remember that team.
Like there, there's so much freedom in this tier. You have so much options. You can make almost anything work.
Yeah.
So just don't be afraid to try things out, even if it's Garbodor or Shelgon or Dodrio or whatever else there is.
No doubt about it. I know you mentioned the HP Water Zapdos. Another Zapdos set that I proudly got from you was Metal Sound, which is
Yeah.
really nice. I love the set a lot, especially on Spike Stack teams, because Metal Sound obviously lowers the opponent's special defense by 2 stages, which naturally forces switches. And with spikes, you can just pounce on that and use that momentum to create more opportunities. So I really like that set, and it's especially effective even on like the more bulkier teams that can use Zapdos as a sort of catch-all sponge while at the same time retaining some sort of offensive presence. It's really nice. Another mon that I love using, and I think I've seen Cole49 use it a bunch as well. And that mon would be Virizion. I like Swords Dance Lumberry on it a lot. It's like an underrated sweeper. Not many people expect it to be honest, but with Leaf Blade, Close Combat, and Stone Edge, you have a lot of good offensive opportunities, provided you get the Swords Dance up. Yeah, just a cool one that has a good niche in the tier.
That's awesome. So basically, the takeaway is that Zapdos is the best, and all experimentation should be done with Zapdos. I don't have any underrated sets to recommend besides Spec Zapdos, which is kind of a standard, but it doesn't get used as much as it should because Spec Zapdos is a monster. I mean, I love Spec Zapdos in Gen 4, and that's before it gets Volt Switch, so the idea of a Volt switching Spec Zapdos is just too much for me to handle. I mean, it would almost be worth running Rapid Spin for, because I don't think I could like consciously want to Volt Switch it in and out. But you know what? Run Spec Zapdos and Specs Raikou together, and everything else will work itself out. So, all right, we are approaching the 2 hour mark, which was not my intention, but this is just a lovely tier, and I feel like we could go on for longer, but we won't. So, do you guys have any final words for these kind viewers who have stuck with us so far?
Yeah, just tier fucking owns. Play it, love it, go to bed with it. I don't know. Just do everything you enjoy with your life and do it with the tier. It's amazing.
I know a
Perfect.
lot of people have kind of written off the tier at a glance because it's too offensive. Certain mons are in their eyes arguably broken. Certain strats are like say Victini or Rain. But I encourage you all to try it. It's a very fun tier. If you like a good offensive game with a lot of risk management, which I personally like a lot. So yeah, give it a whirl. I know UU Classic is currently ongoing, which is a tournament that it functions similarly to Smogon Classic, where it has a lot of individual cups ranging from lower gen U's from SMUU all the way to GSC UU. And I know Black White UU Cup is currently in round 1. So if you're interested, you might still be able to sign up as a sub. Check that out if you want. But or otherwise, you can just ask in Ruins of Elf rooms or the UU room for games, and I'm sure someone will entertain you.
All right, that's more or less it. So I think I'm all talked out too. But so thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you to the kind viewers for sticking with us. I hope this was enjoyable. It really is a wonderful tier, and I really hope that you get into it and leave a bunch of awesome comments about your undoubtedly wonderful experiences. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.